Dog fans, welcome back. We got one of our favorites, John Garcia, on today, talking Demello Jones recruitment commitment today, as well as looking at the rest of the SEC, seeing maybe a team or two that is sneaky good on the trail right now and who can come for that number 1 and 2 spot that Alabama and Georgia constantly have year in, year out in the SEC on recruiting. Next on Locked On Bulldogs.
You are Locked On Bulldogs, your daily podcast on the Georgia Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Locked On Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel, make every moment more. More on them in a second, but we'd like to welcome in John Garcia, recruiting guru and expert. John, how's the day treating you?
It's going well. It's going well. We got the tournament on and plenty of recruiting to get into, so it's a beautiful weekend for me, no lie.
If y'all are over on YouTube side, this TV right now is showing the Locked On Bulldogs podcast logo, but it has been 4 screens of March Madness for majority of the day, and so I'm glad you're enjoying it as well. Sadly, Georgia doesn't get to enjoy it, but hopefully Mike White and the Bulldogs can turn it around very, very soon. But let's talk about a team that is constantly in the playoff picture for NCAA, and that is the Georgia Bulldogs on the football field. John, we just got a commitment today. Demello Jones, 6'1", 175, 180, out of Georgia, an athlete, has just committed today. I want to get your thoughts on him. Tell Dog Nation, who is Demello Jones and why should they be excited about this pickup?
Dog fans should be excited about this pickup because this is a legitimate blue chip, top 100 borderline player who for real could grab an offer to play offense or defense, even at a program like Georgia. Obviously, there's just not that many athletes in any class that are going to have those true green light options on either side of the football, but you could really make that argument for Demello Jones. And actually, right now, probably more comfortable and easier to scout and project as an offensive recruit. Very, very good quarterback, running back, receiver combo guy, just an electric athlete with the football in his hands. But he does moonlight as a defensive back, and I think that's where a lot of schools want to project him towards the next level at 6'1", 180 pounds or so. A lot of that stuff translates over, right? The instincts, the ball skills, the quickness with the ball in the air. But really, once that part of his game starts to match the technical side, there's really no ceiling defensively as opposed to offensively, where we kind of think we got more of a finished product with Demello Jones. So either way, I think UGA is getting a really strong prospect who has a lot of upside at a premium position in the secondary.
That's right. We're talking ball skills. We're talking he could go either way. If he wasn't classified as an athlete, he could be top 100 wide receiver or top 100 DB, which is very, very classic. And we caught wind of a lot of this. Ryan Puglisi, 2024, going to be early enrollee. We had him on the pod last week. He was talking about a couple of guys that he wanted to see. He was excited about this, which is not just him being, hey, let's go Dog fans and let's go recruits, but also, hey, let's go weapons on the offensive side. And so, yeah, looking at this guy's tape and looking at what he can do down in Georgia, he does strike me as right now kind of a kid that's twitchy on the offensive side. Now, as we know, Kirby is very picky technically when it comes to defensive backs. Very, very picky. And if you can make that, if you can do that, great. You're going to get him and all the rest of the defensive coaches. Shu, who just got a pay raise today, is going to be happy with that. However, you're telling me this kid has that twitchiness, has that athletic ability. And right now we just see this reminds me, I think of a lot of recurring things on the trail right now for Georgia. These kind of two-way guys, these twitchy guys, high potential, high ceiling, could be tight end, could be outside linebacker, could be DB, could be wide receivers. There's lots of flexibility here happening. Do you think he's right now listed 4-star? You said borderline blue chip top 100. Do you expect that to continue to go up? Is he one of these guys that as the cycle goes on, he's going to get that bump up in that rating?
Yeah, I think if you were being nitpicky and you wanted to hold his ranking down or make the argument for holding him outside of that national top 100, it's because of how raw he is in the secondary, right? And if everyone is in agreement that he's going to be a defensive back primarily at the next level, then I think there's something to be desired from a technical standpoint right now. But it's kind of the perfect time for Jones to combat a lot of that. If he wants to hit the camp and combine circuit, 7-on-7s, working on defense, he could start to, I guess, ease a little bit of those concerns. But again, this is probably a safety. I do want to make that clear. He's probably a safety. The instincts and ball skills translate maybe even more so at safety compared to corner, because now you're able to read the field. You know, he plays quarterback and he's going to combat quarterbacks as a safety. So those instincts will, I think, allow him to play with great range over the top, but also underneath as sort of a rover. He could be a quarterback spy. I think he's a Swiss Army knife defensively at the end of the day. Right now, a little bit more raw, kind of see ball, get ball at the high school level, but I think that will progress going forward. So yeah, I do think that the rankings will start to adjust. Still got a long way to go with this class of 24, but his junior season was really one of the best in the country. You know, he got Swainsboro all the way to the state title game and in Georgia. And, you know, whenever a South Georgia team is on the rise and it has to compete with those Atlanta schools, it's an uphill battle. So for Demello to have been like the guy, the focal point of the offense, while also playing a ton of defense and playing it well, I think says a lot about his character just as much as it does about his game. So these are the kind of kids you want to sort of swing for the fences on. You want to give them the benefit of the doubt, not to the same degree, but reminds me a little bit of the Malachi Starks evaluation. I think at one point, and probably around this time 2 years ago, I was thinking maybe his best position would be running back at the next level. I mean, this was, go back and watch his prep tape. The running back stuff that he put out on Friday nights was really, really impressive. It was borderline Nick Chubb-ish. So, you know, and I think he even wore 24, but it was about the upside, especially at a program like Georgia that's so deep at seemingly every position. Where does he translate best going forward? Obviously, for Malachi, that was at safety, and we saw how quickly all of those things can come together when you enroll early and you buy into this elite defensive coaching staff. You can see the field as a true freshman and make a huge, you know, phenom level impact. I'm not projecting that for Demello, but we also know this coaching staff has a track record of figuring that thing out pretty quickly with these versatile two-way athletes that have such strong athletic profiles. So in that way, this Jones recruitment reminds me a little bit of Malachi's.
Yeah, absolutely. And you do go back and look at that film. I don't know who, I'm not disparaging people that were on Malachi's team or who he played against. I'm not saying the level of competition wasn't good, but he made guys look stupid silly at running back. It was a freak thing for me to watch. And it did get me very, very excited. I'm glad he's over at safety because I think he's going to be the next 2 years going to be an all stud, all SEC guy back there. And as you're talking about Demello a little bit with his profile, Lewis Seen comes screaming to my mind every single time. You saw Lewis, and Lewis did not have the technical ability that other safeties did. Christopher Smith is a technician back there in the secondary. Lewis Seen is a murderer back there. He's going to come downhill and just smack you. And if you're telling me that this guy has those intangibles, those twitchiness, that ability to get back there, well, now, yeah, Kirby and the rest of the guys can go ahead and get him right. This is a lot of potential, a lot of excitement, which is thrilling that he commits today, lets the world know that, well, he'll be very, very excited. We're going to come back after this. I'm going to ask John about the SEC and other recruitment that's happening over there. But first, I want you about FanDuel. FanDuel is the official sports book of Locked On Podcast and Locked On Bulldogs. Right now, we got March Madness that, like I said, should be on in the background, but I digress for all of you who may not have – maybe not live, which you should be live. Get live. I don't want to put it up there, but FanDuel is a place that you can go right now. And if you are a new member to FanDuel and you sign up, FanDuel.com/lockedon, and your first bet does not cash, don't worry, FanDuel's got you. They're going to give you a no sweat first bet. That is $1,000 in bonus bets. No sweat first bet right now. NBA season is coming to an end, which means postseason is here. We got parlays, single game, all the things that you need to bet on everything. And right now it is the best sports time. Go ahead and get those futures on baseball. Go ahead and get those Masters futures. Go ahead and get everything that you can. FanDuel is the place that Daniel and I trust, my co-host, and John loves it as well. I know he does. FanDuel, the official sports book of Locked On Podcast and Locked On Bulldogs. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. All right, let's talk a little bit about some other notable SEC. Alabama and Georgia will continue to vie for the 1 and 2 spots until Nick Saban retires. I'm convinced. We still think Kirby is the best coach in the SEC, but Nick Saban is the historic one. He's the GOAT, and he's going to continue doing it. So get used to it. It's going to be coin flips from here on out, which is a lot better than Georgia has faced in the past with these. But John, I want to go elsewhere in the SEC. Who are some other teams, some other head coaches, or some other recruiters that are really knocking it out of the park right now? And Georgia should keep their eye out for these schools. Who would you say that should be?
I'll give you two here. I think from a volume perspective, you can't ignore the only school in the SEC with more verbal commits than UGA at this moment. That's LSU and Brian Kelly, obviously capitalizing quickly on the better than expected rookie year for Kelly there in the Bayou. And naturally, it's defensive heavy, this recruiting class for the Tigers, and it's Louisiana heavy. So kind of as you would expect to capitalize on that momentum, I think LSU's doing a really nice job of that. And then, of course, they're in the game for many of the top overall targets, throughout SEC country that will be making their decisions at the end of the summer and certainly closer to National Signing Day. But 11 commits already for the Tigers. Jones was number 10 for UGA. So from a volume and tangible perspective, really like what LSU's done. And I like their quarterback, Colin Hurley, big, physical. Jalen Hurts comp is kind of what I think when I see Colin at a Trinity Christian up in Jacksonville. 6'2", 215 pounds already. Big physical dual threat. That's a really smart kid and a decision maker. So a lot of the things we said about Jalen Hurts coming out. So from a volume perspective, really like what LSU is doing. And then from a keep an eye on them despite not having a lot of commits perspective. Of course, Bama goes without saying, as you've mentioned. What about elsewhere in that state? I think Auburn under Hugh Freeze is going to continue to splash. Every elite recruit in the Southern footprint has seemingly already been over there to see Auburn. They just hosted KJ Bolden this week. He said he's going back to Auburn. They're a threat for an official visit. I think Hugh Freeze is going to crash the party of some of these SEC programs, whether it's continuing to gnaw at the heels of Alabama. I actually like them to maybe flip an Alabama receiver commit, Perry Thompson from Mobile, or just to continue to contend with Georgia, with South Carolina, which is recruiting well, with the Gators down in the state of Florida. I think Auburn could be that sneaky top 10 overall recruiting class that really starts to turn heads with Hugh Freeze's first full cycle. Say what you want about him as a coach, morally, all of those things. He's going to recruit. And he did a heck of a job at the end of 23 with the portal and high school recruiting. And I think in 24, his first full cycle, I think this Auburn class is going to be something to mess with. One, because it's Hugh Freeze. So, offensively, the targets will be there. And two, the state of Alabama and the border state of Mississippi are both loaded simultaneously. And Freeze obviously has ties in both of those states. And Auburn's going to continue to recruit the Atlanta metro and the state of Florida consistently as well. So I think they've got a sneaky high ceiling relative to what we look at right now, even though they've only got 3 verbal commitments technically on board.
Look, Daniel and I were on a couple weeks ago ranking the coaching staff and the programs that are on the rise. And while Alabama may have plateaued, and Alabama fan doesn't want to hear a decline, but they're not to what they were 5 years ago. That's all I'll say. LSU and Brian, look, he was at Notre Dame and he got guys to go play there. And as well as I do, playing at a school that has high academic and high moral written into the code of conduct for students is very tough. Yeah. I'm not saying LSU doesn't have that, but it's not the same. How about that? That's as much as I can say. And now you're going to give him the locale. You're going to have him with all the tradition. This guy knows how to coach, and now he's going to get players over there. And yeah, Hugh Freeze, like you said, it's kind of, to me, it's akin to Steve Sarkisian a little bit. Comes some baggage from previous before. Can coach offense. We know that. There's no question. Can get guys to come play. We know that. At a program that is thirsty for wins. Okay, now all of a sudden it's very, very similar. And yeah, Hugh Freeze is going to make splashes. We saw him at Liberty do it. We saw him before. He can pull guys in. He can get them bought in. He can get them sold. And he can coach up the offensive side. Now, just like Sark, I don't know if he can head coach. That's yet to be determined in the SEC. TBD, But if you're telling me just one-on-one, Sark go play 7-on-7 and score points in practice, oh yeah, Hugh Freeze, same thing. they're going to pull some guys. And it is very interesting. Auburn is a very, very interesting take for me on that because they haven't had that before. They could get some legacy guys and some tradition guys, right? But all of a sudden, when you start pulling guys out of districts that are typically elsewhere, and Hugh Freeze has that ability, has that pull, watch out. And you did mention South Carolina. I have a soft spot in my heart for South Carolina and for being Ball up there. I don't want him to do good because in the SEC, but at the same time, I think he's doing good things. LSU and Auburn, good choices. Hey, John, where can the people find you over on Twitter?
Yeah, Twitter is real simple. Just John Garcia _JR. We link most of our work there and certainly are unafraid to talk some ball on that platform. So please hit us up.
Hit him up. He's a great follow. He's a great conversation. He knows his stuff. John, thanks for joining us. We're going to come back after this, and I'm going to wrap up talking about college hoops as John gets going. So, John, we'll see you later, brother.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate you.
All right, y'all. We're going to come back right after this. Okay, we're talking basketball. We're talking hoops. Georgia is not in the tournament right now. It is March Madness, and yet we don't get to enjoy it, which is a crying shame. At the same time, Mike White, I think, is the guy to do it. Go back and listen to Daniel and to John talking about that last week. There's a lot of good basketball schools that are making some splashes, making some noise in this tournament with great coaching and great transfers. Georgia, we're going to come back later this year, later this month, actually. Talk about some transfer portal hits that we anticipate. Talk about what we anticipate for next year and how the ceiling is high yet again. And I know Georgia fans hate hearing that, but there are a couple transfers that would dramatically shift that for us in totality, as well as keeping you up to date on everything else from recruitment and for the football program. Spring ball is in full swing. We will be talking about position battles, quarterback battles, and this is your friendly reminder. If you are a fan of only one quarterback, and you are not a fan of the best quarterback, please change your perception. We want the quarterback that the coaches think give us the best chance, whoever that is. I don't care their name. It's the same with every position. They know more than we do. Let's trust them. This has been Locked On Bulldogs, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. We will see you all next week.